Emre, tell us your film and introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Emre Sahin, the director of TAKIM, the team.
I'm Kelly McPherson. I'm the producer of TAKIM, the team.
And the film is about a couple of brothers, two brothers that inherit their father's the land from their father, which also happens to be an hourly rental soccer field, and there's a lot of those all throughout Turkey and the city. So they get this field, and it's been in their family for forever, and it's also become by default the heart of the neighborhood, and the whole neighborhood always gathers there. But as they get the field, they realize that there's a lot of debt and there's a lot of other issues with the field, and they're at risk of losing it. But also at the same time, there's these massive construction giant companies coming in that are forcing basically whole neighborhoods to leave, and instead they're going to build skyscrapers and these new modern structures there. So on the one hand, the bank is coming after these guys. On the other hand, the bad guys are coming after them. So they're kind of stuck between these two forces, and they are basically out of options, don't know what to do. They throughout, as they're looking around for how can they possibly get out of the situation, they get wind of a soccer tournament, a street soccer tournament with a cash prize, and so they decide, we know how to play soccer. We grew up on the streets. We know how to play street soccer. So let's put a team together and enter this thing. And if we can win it, we can at least pay off the bank, and then we can deal with the bad guys on our own. So that's the broad premise of the story. It's set in Istanbul, and it's on the one hand, it has a lot of soccer. There's a lot of action soccer in it, but I wouldn't classify it just as a soccer film. There is a main story that goes from A to B, and soccer is a part of that. But it's a fun, energetic story and set in Istanbul.
Let's talk about that other side of it, the bigger scope, if you will, of the film, because it showcases that side of the world not in a nostalgic way, not like we were talking on the red carpet. This is the reality right now. It is changing as we speak, and it's not just Turkey, but it's that whole Mediterranean feel is going through this similar type of change into modern money compared to holding on to that structure that was there before. What was it like for y'all? You guys have been there for a while, seeing this. Showcasing on screen, though, must have been, the main enticing quality to this. You guys are showing something bigger than just a soccer film.
Of course, yeah, and it's we have a strong background in nonfiction and documentary, so maybe that's why we're also drawn to some of these stories that have real, very real world parallels. So the story, it's and I grew up in Turkey, and so Turkey is one of those countries, and there's other in South America or even like in India, people that have seen the movie have been reaching out saying how they're going through a lot of the same things. So a lot of these countries that have maybe been poorer or more shut off in the past are going through these massive changes that should take generations, but instead are happening over 5 or 10 years. And some of that is social, some of that's economic. And in Istanbul right now, there was a big boom in the 90s where all these people moved from the east of Turkey, which is the more rural parts, into Istanbul. And then there's another boom going on right now where basically all those neighborhoods of minorities and kind of people that are on the fringes of society are now being pushed out again to make way for these giant skyscrapers. So if you've been to Turkey maybe 10 years ago and you go again today, it's Istanbul. It looks completely different. It's a totally different city, and it's a very, to me, unnatural change that it's going through. And obviously a big part of that is that these companies that are close to the government are profiting from doing this. So we wanted to tell a story that got into a little bit of that without getting too political or without having people having to know, every little, small detail of intricacies of Turkish society. So that was really one of the places where this film started, and also to capture, life and kind of average life in Istanbul today. We're not showing the most glamorous side of the city. We're showing some of the rougher parts, but these are the parts that are going to be gone that actually, since we've shot, are gone. That neighborhood where we shot at is completely gone now. There's now a giant hole for some big mall or skyscraper. We really wanted to capture that and show that and set a story in that world. And I love soccer, so as we were looking at this, how can we mix soccer with a movie that has something to say and is just, hopefully subtly bringing attention to this change that's happening there. And for you, I mean, for me, I grew up there. For you, coming from the outside, I don't know if.
And from the Texas perspective,
That's a very unique perspective.
like it does, but it warrants in the sense that like, okay, I know it's a very different base for like the construction and the wealth that's coming into like our state, but we're always in the flux of change. I mean, we just keep going. Feels like north. I mean, so in that sense, it's not government, it's big business, but that parallel of big entity taking over, I mean, that has to still been something that you resonated even, being from here.
Yeah, no, you just keep looking, and Dallas just keeps pushing north
Yeah.
and north. I feel like it's pushed to Oklahoma pretty much. Some of that's good in some ways. There's affordable housing for some people out there, and they can live in a place that they want to raise their kids. But I just think it's kind of depressing on the other hand, because it's just so, there's no thought that goes into it. It's just, it really is. I mean, not to sound cliche, but it's money first, and then everything else follows. I don't think people are building massive subdivisions out there because they want people to be able to, raise their family in a great neighborhood. But this is, when we were there, it's right in your face. It's not just because the city is so dense that you can't even drive down a highway and have like a little open space and then get to it. Like you said, the house that the family lives in the film, right behind it, they'd already bulldozed part of the neighborhood. It was coming, and you could see skyscrapers going up all over there. So
And it's, and when we say this, it's like, so where we shot our film, it's, like thousands of homes. It's not like a small little block. Like, they'll clear out. This is thousands of lives, and that's just one example. And in Istanbul alone, there's something like 200 or 300 of these massive projects. And when you add it up, it makes no sense. Just the amount of, it's purely just, keeping these big construction companies going. So they'll build, 2 or 3 of these massive skyscrapers that'll sit there empty because they can't sell them, because each unit is now, $2 or $3 million, and there's maybe 300 of them in each building or whatever. So, or a lot of it is, this is something that's happening globally, but a lot of them will just be sold to kind of rich businessmen abroad somewhere that they'll never come and see it. So it's just very unnatural. This place that was, yes, maybe initially developed in an uncontrolled way and is not, it was kind of an eyesore in some ways, but there's real life there, and there's real things, there's a real community that's being tossed out, and these glass giant buildings that are supposedly, in quotes, modern buildings are there, but there's completely soulless. And
I mean, yeah, extremely poor, but very vibrant, like kids everywhere, dogs, cats, chickens running around, and like you'll see in the film, it's real. You didn't have to like set it up to see kids out playing soccer in the alleys and the streets, on the rooftops. I remember we were out there and there were just kids. I didn't see a parent anywhere, just little kids running along these rooftops, but it felt like a neighborhood. And I think for me, that felt much more, minus probably the chickens running through the street, it felt much more like the neighborhoods I grew up in the 70s, in the sense that you knew everybody, and everybody went outside and played sports until it was dark and yelled car, the car came and all that stuff. So being from here, I connected with it because, neighborhood and family, it's kind of universal.
One element that I loved about the film that connected me immediately was the beans and rice and the food, and that being home. And not just home for the two brothers, but that they shared it with the family, and that's what got the team together, I felt like. Was that always in the script? Was that always something that down home cooking was going to be like that nice little touch of maybe something personal from you, or just not just Turkish people, but I think anyone can get that feel when mom makes something special?
Yeah, no, that was from the very beginning. We knew that the brothers would have to, put this team together. And so, I mean, if you step back one layer, there is that team coming together is symbolic for, part of the message that we're trying to give, this hopeful message, and which was initially mostly for with Turkey in mind, but other places too, where Turkey's become so kind of divisive, especially in politics. It's become very intense, and everything's being, just ratcheted up to a point of neighbors are at each other's throats, or there's all these minorities, and whether it's the Kurds or the refugees, all this stuff that that's very life and death things that are happening that have basically pushed people to the point where it's a very different field than when I was growing up. So one of the big messages we want to give was we can all come together. We don't have to be at each other's throats. We don't have to agree on everything, but let's look at what unites us versus what divides us. And of course, as we were thinking about that, the food was a major element. It's like, and it is beans and rice and turkey. It's like the one thing that everybody loves, And so at least that's a starting point for these guys to find one common ground, and then start to acknowledge to be a team and bond with each other. And the scene that's right before that, so there's some subtleties in there that are that were more pointed in Turkey, I'll say it. But when the team when they first come together, and they're fighting, about their differences, and there's a Kurdish guy and there's a Gypsy guy, and they're each talking about which one was oppressed more, and then and then you have a more devout religious kid who's kind of naive but nice, and then you have the rich kid, and so it's an interesting dynamic to have them all have a voice at the table, which gets to a point of everyone just shouting over each other, and then from there that they realize that this isn't going to work like this. We have to come together. And so, but yeah, a long way of saying the food was definitely an important aspect for us as the unifying theme there.
But I love how you go past just the inner differences between the different types of Turks, but you have a strong female presence too, another element. And then I love there's a line in it that every Turkish team has an African player.
Yeah.
And that is so true of not just street soccer, of world-class soccer, that is very much an element of that, like French soccer. There's always Africans in French soccer, and Turk as well. When Drogba went over there, it was a big deal, and you bring that up in the film. Can you talk about that cultural weirdness that soccer has the ability to blow up culturally, even though it's in parts of the world that maybe haven't experienced that themselves?
Yeah, it is. We were just talking about this. Sports in general, but in this case, soccer, and especially in a place like Turkey, where it's more than just a sport. It really is a part of life, and it is as on everyone's mind as any political or any big anything that might influence your life. Soccer's always one or two on there, and with its good and bad. And so it's interesting to see these cultures that. It's sometimes it's a question of which one's influencing which. Is it the sports influencing the culture, or the culture influencing the sports? And Turkey, because of where it is, has a huge influx of refugees and people coming into Turkey. A lot of them trying to get to Europe, and obviously right now there's the whole Syrian crisis and all that stuff happening in the southeast of Turkey. But before that, the waves that were coming in were a lot of African immigrants and refugees trying to get to Europe, and they'd come into Turkey. A lot of them would end up getting stuck there. So all of a sudden you have these big giant African communities in Istanbul, and it's been an interesting thing to follow that and see the rise of that. And a lot of them then started coming with dreams of playing somewhere in Turkey. And so when you look at there's of course the top league in Turkey, but then there's 10 layers underneath that, and it became this ongoing thing where basically every team ended up with all these African players, no matter how big or how small. And it's an interesting thing to see just the influx of people coming in and out, and it really does start to make you think about how many crazy stories are out there.
I'm kind of curious. Shooting soccer, street soccer is very different. It's very in America we have indoor soccer, but I feel like street soccer everywhere else in the rest of the world is so much more vibrant and crazy than indoor soccer in America. It's not the same. Can you explain filming that? And
Yes.
it's compact and it's chaos, and it can be exciting though. Some of the moves and plays. You guys capture a lot of the great quality or the beauty of the game that's in street soccer. It's that flashy soccer.
Yeah. So that was, there was a very early point when we were writing the film where there was a discussion of, hey, should we make this like a full-on soccer field? And it just, for a lot of reasons, it didn't feel right. All our guys and most people in Turkey learned to play soccer on the streets. There's not this organized thing that we have here. It's you play on the street, and if you're good enough, then you might go try out somewhere. So, and also just the fact that we're talking about a neighborhood and saving that neighborhood just felt more organic that it would be street soccer. But also from a practical side, it's for us it made it in some ways easier to capture because it's a much more smaller field. It's pretty nonstop and very high energy, like you said, and it also requires street soccer much more than full field soccer. It requires extra tricks and extra gimmicks and extra things to get through because there's not a lot of room to do. It's not you can't just kind of outspeed somebody. You have to come up with some tricky ways to get past them. So that led us to think about having a street soccer tournament. And shooting it was interesting because we cast when we did the casting. It was first to find the best actors that we could find, but it was also equally important that they could play soccer. So the auditions were pretty hilarious where we'd have our reads and do everything, and then we'd go, okay, now let's go outside and pass the ball around and juggle and at least get a sense of where they were. And then we had about a month and a half of training before the film where they trained as a team with a coach, which was actually a lot of fun to watch because they really bonded together and became a team there. And through that, they each kind of we gave each one of them some trick moves. So they each of them had maybe like 10 moves that we taught them. And then when we filmed the scenes, we let them play for the first takes or two. So sometimes we let them go for 20 minutes and play a full-on game against another really good team, which also is important to note that a lot of the teams in there are actual teams, like street soccer teams, and pretty rough guys. So when we let them go at it, it was really interesting to see our team to do exactly what we're talking about in the movie, bond together and look out for each other, and then try to beat this other side. So there was a lot of the emotion, a lot of the moments that we capture in the film are very real. And of course, then we'd go back and clean up the scene, and if we needed specific things to happen, we'd clean them up. But we let, as probably 80-90% of what we see there is them actually battling it out versus other real teams. So that was fun. And of course, it was very chaotic where I would have a camera, Clint, our cinematographer, had a camera, and we'd run in there, and I can't tell you how many times we got smacked with the ball, or the lens got hit, or our audio guy would trip up, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of chaos, but a lot of fun.
I want to bring up a specific shots that I loved in the film that you can expand on how you and Clint kind of wanted to showcase this, because I know it must have taken time, but the overhead shots of the field and that those kind of spiral back. Can you talk about the cinematography and the choices you guys made?
Sure. Clint and I, we've worked together and have known each other for 20 years now, and so we have a really good shorthand, and also he comes from a very strong documentary non-scripted background. So he's and him and I, because we've done so much together, we have this unique kind of strange system where
You go.
yeah, we'll just do a quick thing, and he'll know exactly, or I'll know, or I'll just peek up at him, I'll know exactly what he's shooting at any moment. So then I'll kind of go around and get what he's not able to get. And so we like to be very much in the scenes, whatever we're doing, as much as possible, and get the real grit and get some of the stuff that you can't really plan. No matter how much you try, you just can't get some of these actual real moments, which is, again, our non-scripted background. So it's very active, very dynamic, very in the moment stuff. But one thing on a film like this is to balance that so it's not complete chaos all the time, and give the viewers a moment to kind of settle in and get their surroundings. So from the very beginning, we wanted to do a lot of these aerial shots that were planned out to give just sense. So the field, for example, in the beginning, a lot of the movie, we're very much on ground level in the field, seeing a lot of the feel and the sounds and the games on the field. But with that top shot, when you pull back, you just see it's really this one little thing in this giant city, and again, it makes you, to me, it gives you that feeling that, this is just one story of how many stories are out there, and it could be happening as we speak right now somewhere in the city, but, here's our little story that we're covering at this moment.
Well, we definitely appreciate you guys bringing the film here. I know you guys are planning much more in the future as far as what's next. Tell us a bit about what we can find you guys on. I know, the production company and how we can keep track of you, because it feels like you guys are about to just hammer out some great work in the near future.
My mom lives in Allen. I'll give you her phone number. Yeah, no, we were talking today. We had an idea last night, and we'll probably get together and write tonight and work on it. But for this film, we're developing it as a TV series in Turkey right now, because the soccer field, like we always talk about, it's such this hub. All these stories intersect and come in and out of there, and you could spend 10 minutes at the actual field and hear all kinds of stuff and know everybody's business, which is kind of ripe ground. But we've got a bunch of TV series right now. We've got Blues Traveler and Hunting Hitler on History, and doing a couple things for Red Bull. I'm just shelling for us right now. And I don't know, what else have we got?
That's about it.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, guys,
Sorry.
once again, thanks for bringing it. Thanks for bringing it home. And yeah, I love this film. I can't wait for people to see this. And yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you very much.
I have one story he has to tell about. You're talking about the overhead shots, about when you guys nearly lost the drone.
Oh yeah, there's one shot. It ended up not being in the film, but we did this one shot where we pick up from the field and go basically as far as we could possibly go over the city. So Clint and I, we tend to push each other. So he was like, I don't know, I think we should pull it back. He's like, no, let's just keep going. And of course we went. We completely lost track of the drone somewhere over the city. It's like it went like 2 miles away or something. Somehow we got it back. It was pretty hairy.
Yeah, it goes. There's the field. There's this kind of hillside, and the houses go from this really poor neighborhood to this well-to-do neighborhood. Then the Bosphorus, then the bridges, and the old city in the distance, and it just keeps going. And they didn't think they were gonna get it back.
It was an amazing shot, though.
The Lost Drone.
The lost
Oh,
drone.
we've lost so many, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, you heard it here first. Don't lose your drones while filming, but you can still make your movie.
Yes.
Thank you guys
Thank
so
you
much.
very much.
Thank you guys.